Hi, we're back. I'm Elisa Parker, the host of the Wild and Scenic Film Fest Media Lounge. It's the largest festival of its kind, and thousands of incredible activists and filmmakers have come together in our little town of Nevada City. It's great to have you here with us today. One of the common themes this weekend has been what the frack is going on. And you might be thinking, what is fracking? And what does it have to do with you? It has everything to do with you. Even if you don't think they're fracking in your community, as we learned from Deborah Winger, it still affects all of us. I have some folks who are like cutting edge, leading edge on this subject matter. It's more than an issue. It's really a problem that's going to be affecting all of us in one way or another, and already is for many folks. I have Wes Gillingham. He's the founder of Catskill Mountainkeeper, and he brought along David Braun, who is the founder of Americans Against Fracking. And David, I'm also excited for all of us in California, is really taking the lead here to get us informed about what's going on in California, because you know, we were talking off the air, we don't really hear much about it in California. And you're both in the Catskills. Or you were in the Catskills.
I was in New York, and now I'm here. And, you know, it's been an issue for people in New York for some time. I mean, it's been an issue for people in the United States for some time. And fracking's actually been going on here in California for some time, but people didn't actually know about it. It was the folks over at Environmental Working Group that actually discovered it was going on just by going through some records about 3 years ago, and they found that it was going on. But what we're seeing is this major expansion of fracking going on across the country. And the reason that's going on is that a few years ago, the Wall Street Journal put out an article, and it basically said that Exxon is running out of oil. And because of that, that they can't drill their conventional reserves at the pace, or they can't find conventional reserves at the pace that they're drilling them. So they're quickly running out of oil. And so because of that, they purchased this company called XTO, which is a hydrofracking company. And so essentially what they're doing is they're using this experimental, dangerous fracking technology to get at reserves that were not available to them, except for the fact that they're using, conventional reserves mean you find a pocket of oil or you find a pocket of gas, you put a straw into the ground, that pocket of oil or gas comes right up. But this is a whole different invasive process. The oil and the gas reserves are in this bedrock, and they actually drill down into the bedrock and through the bedrock, and they put about 5 to 8 million gallons of water into this rock formation to explode the rock formation. They mix it on average with about 400,000 pounds of toxic chemicals to shatter that rock formation to release those reserves. Well, that's a very invasive process. And what happens is those chemicals, along with the volatile organic compounds, with all of that pressure, end up migrating through our faults and fissures. The well casings itself, those fail at about 1 in 20 in the first year, and they fail at about 50% over the course of 30 years. So it's a dangerous and inherently damaging practice, but the oil and gas industry really needs to continue doing this if they want to stay in business. I mean, of course, we'd all love to see them get into the renewable energy business, but that's a little bit more competitive, and they'd have to compete on a different level with other businesses. So this is why we're seeing this giant expansion of fracking, is that the oil and gas industry really needs to do this fracking, otherwise they just go out of business.
You know, and it's one of the common themes, too, that keeps coming up here. And any of the issues, really, that we're talking about, a lot of it comes down to the oil and gas companies, whether we've been talking about plastics, some of the, the animal population. Of course, with fracking, I mean, it keeps coming back to this specific group of people. Yeah. So that's a whole other area we could talk about. Well, I mean, what do we even do about that, right? Because that is...
But it's not just plastics. I mean, it's also, different pesticides and herbicides and different fertilizers. I mean, there's so many products that are made out of the byproducts of oil and gas products. I'm sorry, Wes.
Well, and even just looking at the energy issue itself, there's this thing that has happened over the course of time with agencies, with state government, policymakers, is the energy industry itself is the most coddled industry. They have so many advantages over other businesses. I mean, hydrofracking is exempt from the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, a host of other statutes and provisions. One that passed in 1980 was amazing to me, the Waste Recovery Act. You have the case where you have these toxic chemicals coming to the well pad that David was talking about. They're listed as hazardous material coming there. They have to go through a whole cradle-to-grave protocol, but they get to that well site, they mix it with water, and they put it down in the hole, and then miraculously, it's no longer regulated as hazardous material.
Wow. Now, Wes,
it ends up going to public waste treatment facilities. The classic example in Pennsylvania was they had all these waste facilities up and down the Monongahela River taking a certain amount of the production water that was coming back out after they hydrofracked. And they had their legal limits. Each facility was doing the right amount, diluting it, putting it in the ocean, or putting it into the river. But they didn't anticipate what would happen if all the waste facilities were taking this. Pittsburgh Steel shut down its machinery for 24 hours because the water that was coming in their intake from the river was so saline, they were worried about it causing problems in their machinery. And that same water, it gives drinking water to like 120,000 people.
Drinking water and wildlife.
Right, and that same brine that they were worried about, that salt, the bromide salt that was in that production water, if you mix bromides with chlorine, you get trihalomethanes, which are very potent. It's a very potent carcinogen. So any public water facility that's taking water out of the river is adding chlorine to take care of bacteria and other things, and they're making a carcinogen out of our drinking water.
Wes, this applies to you on a personal level in the Catskills. Can you share with us a little bit about how you got involved with this?
So when the whole thing started in New York, which was roughly, we were going on 6.5 years ago, I was a vegetable farmer. And I was at a local farming meeting, and then people were coming in and say, hey, so-and-so got a gas lease. The gas landmen are coming around here. And that had happened in our area 35 years or so ago. They took out leases, and they drilled a couple exploratory wells, but then disappeared. But they came back now because of the technology that's been developed that David talked about. Hydrofracking has been around since the 40s, and horizontal drilling has been around for a long time too, but it's the combination of those two activities and then the particular mixture that they've come up with of chemicals, because they have to take water and they have to make it viscous enough so that sand will float in the water. And when I say sand, there was a movie here at the festival called The Price of Sand and the impact of frack sand mining. That's a whole nother topic. What's happening in Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota.
So before, as a vegetable farmer, did you ever consider yourself an activist?
I've always been a little on the edge of what's going on.
What would be your message, both you and David, to folks who are watching this? There's two parts really to this question about why it's so important when you feel passionate about something or you become aware there's something going on in your community. Why it's so important to really step out there and know that every single person can make a difference.
Well, it's one thing to say that something's bad. I can say that what's going on in my community is a terrible thing, but it really becomes a true statement when I actually do something about it. And I strongly encourage everyone to make their words true, because if we actually had everyone making their words true, we wouldn't have the problems that we have and that we're facing in this world. And all it simply takes is an action. It doesn't mean that you have to jump into it to the extent that we have. You don't have to devote your life to it. It's simply a personal choice that I've made because I feel so passionate about something I feel shouldn't be happening and is one of the most preposterous ideas ever imagined that's being implemented. But it can be a simple action. Somebody can just pick up the phone and make a phone call. They can get a little group together in their community to do something about it. They can, when they find out an action is happening in their state capital, they can get people on the bus. On March 15th of this year, we're going to have a major mobilization in Sacramento where we're going to expect 2,000 to 4,000 people to show up in Sacramento to push for a ban on fracking. And we need people to get on those buses and mobilize and show up. So there's many different levels of engagement, but the critical thing is that people allow themselves to make their words be true. So if you say something is a bad thing, if you think pumping 400,000 pounds of toxic chemicals into each one of these wells, and we know what these chemicals do, we know that 32% cause cancer, we know that 43% are genetic disruptors, we know that 58% are immune suppressants. If we know these things, and if we know this is bad, then it's, it's up to us, it's our conscience, that we actually take a step to do something about it, and then we become realized in that process, which is a very empowering thing. And then if we continue on and we win, well, then we become an empowered, electorate, right? We become this empowered community, and then it's like, well, what's next? What else do we need to address here? But this would, for me, is kind of the one main issue that I'm focusing on, because to me it's the most egregious.
Yeah.
I would just want to say one thing. He said not to you don't have to devote your life to it, but I got to say that part of what, how I'm ending up sitting in this chair is the fact that when this whole thing started, we held public forums asking questions. We weren't for a ban on Friday. We were like, what is the issue? What are the details to it? And through that process, people are overwhelmed by normally occurring radioactive material, thinking about radioactive drinking water, talking about earthquakes where the injection wells are, where the waste has to go. I mean, this whole host of things. There's like an issue for anybody on this one.
Yes.
I mentioned the frack sand mining, then there's pipelines, compressor stations, and all the air pollution associated with that. And then what's happened in New York is there's been a whole host of people, not professional environmentalists, not professional organizers.
Yeah, Deborah
or
Winger
activists,
doesn't even see herself as that.
came out of the woodwork. I mean, I get emails from people, all night long. I know because they're working, they have a job, they have kids, they're doing, and then they're sitting there at home, typing away, sending out emails and trying to organize at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I have never experienced the kind of empowering coalition and work that has happened in New York against the gas industry, and you're starting to see that now all across the country.
Well, when we started doing this, they told us that we weren't going to be able to stop it. That the best we were going to be able to do is accept mediocre regulations that might protect people. And we just rejected that wholeheartedly. We said, no way. We don't buy that. We don't believe that. We don't see that as being the truth. We don't care what kind of political analysis you come up with or how smart you think you are, but we're not going to buy that, nor are we going to accept it. And here we are 5 years later, and it hasn't happened yet in New York. And that's the key thing, is that nothing is inevitable.
Yeah, nothing is impossible.
Nothing is impossible,
just because,
and nothing is inevitable.
What has been dreamed before, right? These broken systems were dreamed up.
Right. Yeah.
So what will the new dream be for us?
Right.
It's like we're creating our own rules.
Right.
We're creating new rules, and it's possible. And the consumerism is a huge part too, about every person. So I know we need to wrap this up. So just my last two questions with this is, can you just speak to how important it is to have a festival, an event like Wild and Scenic Film Fest here to share these stories?
Well, I came to this festival and I brought my daughter because I realized it's not just a film festival. You're bringing the filmmakers together, but then the whole community gets taken over, and you get to meet people that have connections to people you've known for years in other places. This is an activist convention. It's not just a film festival. The films are like this tricky way of getting all these people in the same town so they can network together. And that's what's really exciting about it for me. And I've been having a blast. And so is my daughter. And we homeschool, and she's here at 13, and like this is her homeschool, and she's getting incredibly educated.
By the way, his daughter is a journalist, an aspiring journalist who writes for your local paper.
Right. Yeah.
And she writes better
and she's
than
going
most.
to cover the event.
She writes better than most adults and does incredible investigative journalism.
Did you connect with Tim DeChristopher?
Yes, we've both worked with Tim in the past, and we're working on projects together.
How has his story influenced or impacted the work that you're doing, or just your belief to know that one person can make a difference?
Well, in New York, when we were about to get this demonstration project dumped on us, we mobilized. We did a march in New York, 2,000 plus people marching through Albany, And we got every environmental organization that functions in New York, from all the way to the top, Sierra Club, NRDC, all the way to some local Protect My Town kind of organization. We all came together and said, not one well. And there were 5,000 people that signed a pledge of resistance, which came from
7,000.
7,000, sorry, that signed a pledge that said, if you go forward and allow a demonstration project in the state, we will do whatever
Our conscience
leads us
us.
to resist in the form of protest, civil disobedience, whatever your conscience leads you to.
And what that actually ended up, speaking of leading to, is that ended up leading to Arun Gandhi signing the pledge, along with, you know, Mark Ruffalo and a few others. And so the last thing Governor Cuomo wants is a Gandhi getting arrested on his doorstep for proceeding with hydrofracking. Like, that could be a historic consequence, you know, for his career.
Yeah.
So, you know, Tim, I think, definitely had an inspiration for that. And, you know, and Tim's like this kind of no compromise kind of character. And, you know, honestly, that's what the earth and the environment need. Those generations that are 10 generations from now, they need us not to compromise. If they want to have the kind of quality of life that we're living here on this planet now, they need us not to compromise. They need us not to be reasonable with these chemical companies, with the oil industry. They need us to proceed full speed ahead to protect this planet. Otherwise, either they don't get born, or they get born to starve or suffer or have to move their homes out of the way of the rising waters. It's just not a good formula for them unless we push back, and we push back as soon as possible. So, you know, God bless Tim DeChristopher and all he's been doing. We're real happy that he's taken the stand and continues to be the character he is. So,
real quick, finish this sentence. What empowers me is, Wes?
Hemlock trees in my backyard that sit over the spring where I haul water every day for my cattle. That place is what empowers me.
what empowers me? What empowers me is love.
Excellent. So great to have both you guys here, and thank you for your passion and for putting your passion into action, and you're what this festival is all about. So I want to thank you for joining us here. Check
Thanks
it
for having
out.
us.
Check out both their organizations to learn more about anti-fracking, and so great. And anything else where they can get more information?
CaliforniansAgainstFracking.org, AmericansAgainstFracking.org, and CatskillMountainkeeper.org.
All right, and March
Excellent.
15th is in California.
March 15th, Sacramento. Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Be there.
Check out CaliforniansAgainstFracking.org.
I'm Elisa Parker, and Wild and Scenic Film Fest here 2014. We'll be right back.
All right.